Today, we get to sit down with Lola Linarte, an international model, actress, TV host, and entrepreneur, born in Nicaragua and currently living in New York City. Fun fact, she studied cultural anthropology at Texas A&M, and you might have seen her hosting red carpet events in Ford, Payless, and Budweiser commercials, and in Robert Rodriguez's Sin City 2. She's most passionate about unifying women from diverse cultures and backgrounds through her creative and entrepreneurial endeavors, which so are we. So we are so excited to chat with Lola.
Hi,
Lola. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. I'll be better once the coffee hits my vein.
Oh my God, I know. We feel the same. Well, Lola, this is Tina.
Hi, Lola.
Hi.
It is so nice to meet you.
So great to meet you.
You look stunning.
You look like an earth angel. Like, you're absolutely gorgeous.
You got... Okay, stop. Don't stop. I'm not kidding you. I dreamt that my computer would not connect to Zoom and that the both of you were like, "Nah."
Well, we would never be like that. We would have just rescheduled or figured it out because tech is the worst part of this.
It's our nightmare.
Okay, so Lola, you have a very interesting life trajectory, which I can't wait to get into. But first, I have to tell people how we met and what you do. So you're a very successful model in New York City, and you and I met on a fashion segment on the Today Show a few years ago. And I just remember being like, this is one of the most gorgeous women I've ever seen in real life. And then just very drawn to your energy. And then we've just kept in touch the past few years.
Absolutely. I was thinking back on that and I'm like, what is time? What is time? Because that was like 5 years ago. And I remember that job meaning so much to me because I never imagined you write down things that you want to see yourself do and think like, oh, that can never happen. Or how is that even going to happen? And the fact that we met on such an important job to me is everything. And even a lot of that day is so seared into my mind. And so I really am so happy that we stayed connected. After that day, we had so much fun.
We had so much fun. It was a really happy, positive, I mean, down to the hair and makeup people, the producers, the other girls, like it was just, I remember that day just being such a lovely experience from top to bottom.
It really was. I met Brooke Shields. I was like, who did I think I am?
Yes, I forgot we met Brooke Shields. We met Brooke Shields. She was a guest co-host. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God. Because I remember watching that segment when you were, because I think, weren't we living together?
Tina, I think we were roommates at the time.
And you got to keep the jacket, that light pink jacket.
And I got to keep these fun blue strappy, like stiletto heel shoes.
Yes. Oh, I remember it.
Just unbelievable. Okay.
So fun.
So Lola, you have had this really cool New York City modeling career, even though you're what everyone calls in the business, like an in-between size, which so am I, because you're around a size 8, and in fashion and modeling, straight size is like 0 to 4 plus 14, 16. So the 8, 10s, and 12s, which I fall into that category too, is like, hello, what are you doing? And I know you've been told like, good luck at a size 8, like you're in no man's land. So can you tell us a little bit about what modeling has been like for you at your size and maybe some of the challenges and kind of how you've still had this flourishing career?
Yeah, no, modeling in general is an odd job. And if you open your mouth, I found about any size that you are, people don't like it. There's always going to be one side of the pendulum that's like, oh, it could be worse, or you're not big enough, you're not small. Everyone has some sort of opinion about whenever it is that you open up your mouth and your personal experience in the industry. So mine, I was mentioning to you prior, is I've been everywhere and I'm just shy of 5'10". I've been everything between a size 2, which is absurd, to at the height of the pandemic, I think I was maybe teetering into a 12. Now I'm back somewhere between an 8 and a 10. But when I was modeling initially, I was doing runway, doing all that, and there was like this glamour to it. But I forced myself to be that small because it isn't like what it is now 10, 15 years later, where there you do see a rise in encouragement of people being curvy and having just somewhere of a range of bodies. But I was always told, you're not going to really find that much work. So either decide to be a 12 plus, or somehow force yourself to stay into the 2s and the 4s. But my body just naturally didn't want to do that. You get tired. It's just too much. So while I did have some successes, I had to have that realization with myself of, where do I feel most comfortable, even if that means that doesn't mean me working anymore. And my body naturally loves to be into the 6 and the 8s. So what I found though is I pushed myself to do face, so face and hair, and then parts modeling, because that gave me this grace of, well, you're gonna like these other things despite what I'm fitting into a jean. You're not going to care.
So wait, are there different, okay, I'm like the lay person here. Like Alex is the model. I am the person that's like, what? Tell me about this magical world.
Well, Tina is super in the business, theater, singer. We both started in theater. She is currently has a solo show as a singer, and she's a makeup artist that works all the time. So those are like the areas that she kind of fits into right now.
But like modeling, I've never done like modeling so Alex is always telling me about these things, and I'm always just my mind is blown by the industry. So are there different categories? So can you choose face and hair over what's the alternative, body?
I mean, that's a really great question. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that it's called parts modeling, right? Parts modeling, and you name it. It's like hands, feet, back, neck. There's just, you think about these things that you don't think about when you get into the industry. You're like, oh man, yeah, like someone does need to have like a beautiful clavicle moment to show off said necklace, or they're doing like the thing for the Sally Hansen, the hand things, right? Someone's got to sell that spray on the legs, or sell the shoe. I actually was on a shoot not too long ago, and one of my girlfriends has her hands covered in tattoos, and someone had to stand behind her. It was a beauty shoot, and do a this number. Those are not her hands, and they're
God.
touching her face as if she would be touching her face, just in order not to cover up her tattoos, but they wanted her face.
That's like an SNL skit.
I know.
It is. Tina, so we have a friend who's also on the podcast, Lola. Lola does parts modeling.
Okay. Yes.
She does. I've done legs for like a weighted blanket, which was so funny. And I recently did hands, and the terrible thing was they asked me for photos of my hands, and I have a tattoo on my wrist. Well, I sent a clear photo of the tattoo. The tattoo is in all the photos. And then someone on set, when I got there, was like, what is this? What is the tattoo? Like, they missed it. I was like, guys, I sent 50 photos of this. It was fine. They just had to, covered it up. But oh my gosh, you never know how complicated a hand modeling situation can be. It sounds easy. It sounds like it's nothing, but there's like so much thought put into it.
No, there really is. I have screenshot a few of the breakdowns for hand modeling, because they make me laugh so hard, where it's must have complete control of every digit. And even more absurd of that, like must not have curvature on any, whatever. And I'm like a 12-year-old boy with my humor. So I'm like, so
curvy digits.
Curvy digits.
I mean, that has to be so hard though, like to not get in your head every little detail about your body is being scrutinized. What gave you your body positivity?
I am so blessed to have my mom. I just be so encouraging and loving. But the thing is, I have to even peel it back a little bit more, is I was this little tomboy, right? I grew up with like a ton of boy cousins. I have an older sister, and my mom's a little bit of a tomboy too. She loves a bold lip. Right. She loves a hair moment, a beautiful perfume moment, but that's kind of it. She never focused. Can't even think of the time where she was speaking negatively about her body.
You never hear that. It feels like it's generational trauma being passed down.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. She was just so great about being encouraging hobbies or my personality, or I really do look back on that. And I think when you get older and you just start having friends around you who have been affected by their moms or aunts or whomever's around them, get into their heads, I remember thinking, I don't think that. And I just remember thinking, I was like, oh, maybe that's just them and then not me. And obviously you get older and the comparison thing starts happening. But my mom always just anchored it back to like, you are smart, you are funny, you are this, you are that, like you are not your body. And I was just like, like bubble boogers. And I think I'm like, man, I got really lucky. Got really lucky in that way.
That is amazing.
And then I do feel like I met you on the Today Show, you kind of became the morning show model queen. You know what I'm talking about. In a morning show, they do a fashion segment and everyone like walks down and you're showing. It had to feel really good from starting to focus on parts and hair and face to also be celebrated for the full body on camera stuff.
It was so much fun. And my hometown is itty bitty. And we're a little border town between Texas and Mexico. Itty bitty, right? I always say that you throw a baseball in Texas, if it gets lost, it's probably already in Mexico. It's so close. And the pride that I felt because my hometown would just rally behind me anytime I posted something on Facebook, like where you check yourself in. People clamored to do it, and I just felt this sense of responsibility to not be nervous, because I would be so nervous no matter how many times I did it. Every single time I'm like, this is live TV. This is national live TV. I can't mess this up. But when I would read these messages, people would just like champion behind me, and it just felt so nice. It felt so nice, and their positivity towards that was great. And I will remember, actually, I have one anecdote. I remember coming back to Texas. I'd gone through this breakup, and my now mentor for my career, she used to be my publicist, brought me down to this like women luncheon thing, and you had to like go and introduce the person to your left. And I gave this like very short bit about myself to this woman. I wasn't really feeling it, and she introduces me like with a little bit of information that I gave her, and my mentor hears her introduce me, and she's like, no, wait, she's on the Today Show and she does this. And I thought, well, that's just like something I do. Well, later on, I had a couple women come up to me and they said, that's really great that you do that. I'm sure that this is just a part of your career, but being from the border, we don't get these opportunities. And it's nice that you get to represent and give little girls, like other little brown girls, an opportunity to hope and dream bigger. And I just thought that is so great, because I am accomplishing my dream, but I'm so in my head about that I wasn't even thinking how the ripple effect of how it would affect younger girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that gives me chills.
It gives me chills too, because morning shows, I mean, think about it. It's on in every household. It's while people are having coffee, kids are running around getting ready, the moms are trying to watch it. Like, people see it. And so for a little girl to be like in her PJs with her mom and see you, that's going to affect her later on, whether she like subconsciously, whether she knows it or not.
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I have stayed so passionate and driven in the industry too, truly, is because I don't remember seeing anybody look like me when I was growing up. Right. I mean, now I paid for this blonde, right. But, I definitely, I'm like little Caribbean girl growing up in the border. So I remember thinking to my sister, well, are we pretty? Like, I remember having one moment where I was like, are we pretty? Because we would watch QVC, right? And we would just nerd out during Gem Week, right? And just like watch these things, or watch other like Disney shows or Nickelodeon, but nobody looked like us. They would be like beautiful Caucasian models, there'd be beautiful Black models, and like nothing in between. So then you can imagine, fast forward to now I'm modeling, where I am not this, not that, right? With size, but I'm also not Black, not white. So I'm like, oh man, like I'm in the in-between of the in-between.
The in-between of the in-between. Yes. Yeah. Can you tell us, Lola, where exactly were you born, and a little bit more about your background and like growing up and where you grew up?
So I was born on the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua, this town called Bluefields on the Caribbean coast. And my dad is Jamaican Cuban. His mom is Jamaican Cuban. Rather, his mom is Jamaican Nicaraguan. His father is Cuban. And my sister and my mama were born in the capital, in Managua of Nicaragua. And then when I was 2, it was a week after I turned 2, October 2nd, we came up to the US in Brownsville, Texas, because both my dad's, his biological dad and his stepfather are shrimp boat captains. So they got on a shrimp boat and then landed in Brownsville, Texas, which is the shrimping capital of the world.
What?
Who knew?
This is brand new information. What a great trivia question.
I had no idea.
I know. Take that one to the bank.
Brownsville. All right. Well,
Brownsville. And then I grew up in a little town called Laguna Vista, which basically I always just say I grew up in South Padre Island, right? Texas. Everyone knows it as the spring break town, Texas. Then later went to college in Texas A&M. But yeah, always forever a Texas girl.
So what made your parents want to leave Nicaragua in the first place? And sort of like, what were they doing while you were there? And then what did they do when they came here when you were little?
Yeah, so that's a really great question that is still evolving 34 years later in my life, because the answer always changes, right? In very true Linarte fashion. And I don't know if this is a lot of like immigrant homes or minority homes, but there's just a lot unsaid. There's a lot that I'm like, wait, hold on. And you're like trying to connect the dots. And because I came so young, that there's things you don't know that you don't know. As far as I know, my father's family was already here. My father stayed behind. The rest of his family left to Nicaragua, left from Nicaragua to Texas. And my father stayed. My mom had us. There was the war going on, the Contras and the Sandinistas and all that. My father was in the military at the time, and my mom was a professor, and she's an economics professor down there too. So that's always strange to me, where I think I don't have the typical immigrant story where my parents came for better opportunities. My parents had all the opportunities in Nicaragua. We came here, and that's the blurry part of like the who, what, where's it, whatever.
Well, also you were two. So,
and I was old. Yeah, I get a pass.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, get a pass for sure.
Yeah, I get a pass on that. But, only now, I just became a U.S. citizen 4 years ago as a permanent resident for a while there, that those questions started to come up again. Because when you're applying for citizenship, I mean, every parking ticket, every breakup, every this, every that you've ever experienced just is like they write the story on you and they can peel it apart. And those are questions that I didn't even think to ask. You just think, oh, well, it'll be okay. It'll be fine. I've got nothing to hide. And then they'll be like, what is such and such, this and that? And you're like, what is that? I actually don't know.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few things that I found out about my journey, even while I was here. I was telling Alex that I didn't know that I was even undocumented when I was till I was 12. That means that we overstayed our visa, like many people do. And we couldn't figure out how to process it normally because of my father having left, the military. I can't even find the best equation, but my father basically deserted, and the U.S. doesn't Nicaragua is socialist. So at the time, you can imagine this is like 35 years ago, whenever it is, they didn't know what to do with us. We were trying to seek asylum. I think the story goes, we were trying to seek asylum. They didn't grant it to us. We're in Texas at this point, and, I can't help but just laugh at that. Like, we're in Texas at this point until finally we get an immigration attorney to help our case. It's always bothered me when people have like get in line, like they always use that term when it comes to immigration and filing that process, because there is no line. Someone point me to it, because I never found it. You're competing against a sea of people who are applying and doing all this at the same time. And everybody's case is so different. So they grant, more grace and opportunity, obviously, to children. But if they're separated from their moms and children, like, I'm only now learning about this too, because my sister is an immigration attorney in the city.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Right.
So you can imagine. Yeah. I'm like, wait, what was your day like?
Oh, I can't imagine. Was there ever an idea or an option or a thought to go back to Nicaragua instead of staying in the States?
My mom would have loved that. She had her whole life there, and she had her whole family there. And she is one of 6. My mom says that she's like, I would skip meals so I could have money so I could take the bus to go into the capital to get an education, right? Like, that's my mom's existence.
Whoa.
So the idea of coming to the US and starting over was never appealing to her. She's like, I've done that already. I made a name for myself. I sacrificed everything that I needed to do to get us to a great place. So my mom was like, smell you later, US. if it came down to it, she was ready to go back. But I mean, it was just that wasn't necessarily an option for our family. And by that point too, we just sort of like rooted more, and my parents saw us thriving in the school system, that they thought maybe this is the better option.
And can you talk about, so at 12, you become a permanent US resident. And then can you talk about what went into waiting to become a US citizen, and then what made you make that decision?
Absolutely. I love this question, because I always have always struggled with identity, the concept of identity and what that means for me in my life, because, the term Afro-Latina is coming up quite a bit now. And my sister and I have same mom, same dad. We look worlds apart from one another. And, that's always something that with our Nicaraguan, we knew we were born in Nicaragua. Later in life did I find out my father's biological dad's Cuban. Later in life did I find out my grandma is part Jamaican too. So as this is evolving, my identity is evolving. We're growing up in the border, Texas-Mexican border, around a very strong Catholic Mexican community, both of which we are not. And, just sort of adapting and finding your way, and you're a kid and you don't want to stand out. But, I have parents who were very proud to be from Nicaragua, and we had Nicaraguan food every single day. And they really encourage us to just fully embrace it, speak Spanish in the house, and as much as we can, so we didn't lose that part of ourselves. Then I just, got into college. I'm 18. I'm studying culture and social anthropology. And I remember my professor saying, listen, like, if you also want to be I wanted to be a professor like my mother. They said, we really encourage you to become a U.S. citizen so that you have, the U.S., should anything happen to you in another country, protecting you. And I just, no interest, none. So then I'm 22, I'm a baby, I meet my ex-husband, and I don't go to grad school. I end up, putting that dream aside, and he's a U.S. citizen. And then I still had no desire to become a U.S. citizen, knowing full well that having been married to him, that was an option and I could have my citizenship in a second. I said, that's not who I am, because my identity was so closely tied to my Nicaraguan passport and my citizenship. And I was chilling with my green card. But it was just finally when, unfortunately, the fear of Jesus came over me when Trump came into power. And it was just saying a whole lot of things that frightened me. And I realized that my status in the country was hanging on, just on the fringes. I processed that paperwork and I got it pretty quickly. I got my citizenship very quickly, but that was ultimately the push that I needed. And I thought, this is not okay. And what am I going to do now at this point in Nicaragua at 30? So I'm good.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of getting your citizenship? Because all I've heard is that it's a crazy nightmare, even for English speaking, very well educated individuals. So I just can't even imagine. I heard it's just like a blur of paperwork and questioning. And can you let us know a little bit about your experience?
Yeah. That experience is, in a nutshell, awful, because you have to sort of make your case, right, as to like why you should be a U.S. citizen. And that involves putting a lot of time, a lot of money. And I, had just, I had been here for about a year, I believe, in the city. So it's very, very, very costly. And I found resources here in the city so that you could do it without an attorney. It was through an organization. So I can't speak to what the process is like. Should you get an immigration attorney yourself? That must be worlds easier. But I did it through an organization here that helped me and facilitated all that. But it's just the amount of paperwork that I can't, like everything, like I'm telling you, like my transcripts, what organizations did I join? What organizations were my friends involved in, right? So that should they go that far back, they can say, yes, you were never associated with these like questionable things. I'm not kidding you. At least for my case, it was like the divorce decree, things that perhaps my ex-husband was a part of, parking tickets, any sort of citation. I remember thinking like, did I pay my library tab at school?
Oh my God.
That's terrifying.
This is such stuff that we like take for granted. I mean, because you were raised here. You came over when you were 2. Like this is what you know. This country is what you know. And for them to question that and like go through it with a fine-tooth comb is like mind blowing.
I am like a recovering rule follower and people pleaser. so I'm just like really trying to do things by the book. But there was a moment where I at the 11th hour, speaking of like my divorce decree, didn't realize I needed to have the paperwork if I filed, the petition for, like, I think it was like the petition, the decree, that this, that, and whatever, right? And I didn't have it. I could only get it through in Austin. This is already me living here. I had to beg one of my girlfriends to let me use her assistant for the day, for her to stand in line, affidavit, like her, yes, she can pick this up for me, have this thing overnighted. Like it was 2 days before. And I'm thinking, oh no, like I did not get this far for that to be
for formality, like a piece of paper to blow it all
right. Yeah. And so, you finally go and you submit it all, you get processed. My girlfriends actually were in front of me the day that I opened up my letter, when they finally tell you when your naturalization ceremony is. I'm in front of like a bagel shop and also bubble boogers. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
So great. But I remember the officer who she asked you all these questions, right? She has your whole life in front of you. So before I even got this paperwork, afterwards she's asking you like, okay, who's on the face of the dime, and like who was our fourth president and all this stuff. Okay. And afterwards you get just to sit there and wait. And she's looking at you and she just says, I'm going to recommend that you get processed to be a citizen. And I just burst into tears in front of her. And I go, can I hug you? And she goes, no, but it happens every day, and congratulations.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I can't imagine the relief. And like, here's the thing. I could tell you the fourth president right now. I could not tell you who's on the dime right now. And I would not pass this test without a lot of studying. So like, it's just, I can't imagine the work, not just the paperwork, but like the studying work. Then was there like light at the end of the tunnel? Was the ceremony a beautiful moment?
The ceremony was probably one of the most incredible days of my life. Truly, I can't imagine. I mean, maybe until I have kids of my own, I don't know. It was so special because the presiding judge, and I want to find out her name. I'm sure that I can go back and look, but was this just incredible Filipina judge presiding over the ceremony. And I had my sister there and two of my other guy friends there, which it's a shame now because people now with COVID, like you can't like bring the whole tribe of folks and my now ex-fiance at the time, like he was there. It was just really cool energy. And she presided over the ceremony and said this beautiful speech, and how she's a single, has a single mom. She had a single mama, and she was the only child to her mom, and how her mom, cleaned homes and hotel rooms and just would like put her pennies together so that she could get her education. And she's like, I did. And she's like, I became the first Filipina judge to be able to like oversight in the Circuit of New York. And she was like, I want to remind you that your voice is loud now with your vote. Right? Like nobody can take this away from you. I don't care, how you view politics. I don't care, what religion you are, what color you are. You have your vote matters so much, and like you too can like go and like afford others opportunity and just beautiful things. And I was telling my sister, I'm like, wow, her speech was so impactful. I wanted to stand up in the middle and just like slow clap.
Absolutely.
Just chills, just so beautiful. And I thought, I'm so glad I made this choice, and I'm so proud. I'm so proud to be a U.S. citizen. And I know that, it hurts me when people talk about, their views on the United States and what have you. And I'm like, man, like this means absolutely everything to me. And that day's just sort of like kicked it off. It's really special.
Honestly, I have chills, and like I feel like I'm gonna tear up just listening to your recap, let alone if I was in that room. It's so powerful. And I'm so proud of you for making that choice and following it through and doing that's a huge accomplishment.
Thank you for saying that. I think that something that I wasn't prepared to do was actually because the US doesn't recognize dual citizenship with Nicaragua. And I didn't find that out until later into the process, is when I got to the ceremony, I had to like turn over my green card.
Whoa.
and officially renounce any sort of legal ties that way with Nicaragua. I didn't know that until basically the 11th hour. So I like turned it over. I'm sure like this woman had to like pry it out of my hand, but I just thought that's the last bit that I have, and this is going to be a brand new life.
How have your thoughts around your identity shifted?
That's a great question. I feel that, especially now knowing like the more like the components with my dad's family and their nationalities and how they identify, the evolution of how I've seen myself, and in context to career, oftentimes I find that men do this, right? Where their career is everything to them and that's their identity. I feel like as women, we have, like we put too much identity to our bodies, too much identity to like a couple other aspects of our life. And then I think on top of that, okay, well, how do I self-identify when it even just comes to my ethnicity? At least in the industry, I'm considered ethnically ambiguous, but I definitely skew Latina. Here and there, I'll get something like Native American or Pacific Islander here and there, right? But for the most part, just definitely skewing Latina. But with this, I think I just have now said Caribbean just to spare people the time, the in and out going through the time of being like, I'm this and I'm that. And because that's different when I have my girlfriends here or guy friends here who are, second, third, fourth, fifth generation people. I'm not even that. I'm an immigrant. And so I can say very closely, like, well, my dad's this and the dad's not that. But now being a US citizen, I don't know if I actually thought about that. That's a really great question. I just think I'm Caribbean, but I'm American.
Yeah. And honestly, it might change. I mean, like you said, you're uncovering and you're figuring out, and there's new developments. It could change in a year how like your answer to that question. Can you tell us some of your favorite things about Nicaraguan culture? I mean, I'm interested because I'm going to be really honest. I don't know so much about Nicaraguan specific culture.
Yeah. No, we are, I have a girlfriend who is she's a spa director that I actually met. She was a spa director here at the Surrey because that was I worked with spa directors with my former job. And she moved, she's born and raised Brooklynite, and then moved down to Palm Beach. And she's been seeing a guy down there for a few months. And she's like, Lola, he's Nicaraguan. And I go, oh my God, are he and I cousins? Because there's like two of us.
That's hilarious.
We should find out. And it's wild because Nicaragua is like the most populated Central American country. It's the largest Central American country. But when people think of Central America, they always think of Costa Rica. But when I think of my favorite things in Nicaragua, it always is the people, the most hospitable people ever. This is a third world country, yet people are so giving and loving. And they'll be like, I have these 2 pennies, but do you want my 2 pennies? Right. Oh. And they work for, maybe, I can't even remember the last time I said, so I probably will misquote this, but people work for like $1 a day or something absurd. And yet they are so happy. And it's so rooted on family and community and music and doing so much with the little bit that you have and operating from that. Right? Like you're not thinking about what you don't have. Like you're operating with, every day people wake up and they go to the market and they get a little coffee and they go to school and and it's just like a simple, beautiful life. And I miss it so much. I haven't been in a very long time, and, life just gets away from you. And then I had every plan to go in like 19, and we had some, political unrest. and then I thought, I'll go in 2020, and then obviously COVID, but it's just the best food, the most beautiful terrain, right? We have volcanoes, and we have this like German Nicaraguan community in the mountains. They have gorgeous coffee plantations. They have the beautiful beaches, and it's like the one that you have like the Pacific side, and then you have the Caribbean side, and it's just worlds apart, and it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Alex shared with me a little bit about a relationship that you had a gut instinct that something just like wasn't right.
It's funny you say that. The first thing that came to my mind, Tina, was which time.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Right. Because like I was mentioning, earlier, I was married before, and I was married pretty young. Great guy, right? Like I can't actually say bad things about, the relationships that I've been in with the people, because you don't pick someone and they're like monsters. My ex-husband was wonderful in a lot of ways. You meet him, you love him. And I love a big personality. I love a person that people are drawn to. He was a
professional wrestler. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Your ex-husband. Okay. And this is from when you're like early 20s, correct?
This is I'm in my early 20s.
Right. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And I had come back. Life is very funny because I had decided to take off my spring semester of my junior year. Right. And actually, I don't think that we chatted about this, Alex, before, but I didn't realize how now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that's what that was. Is I was struggling really so much with severe depression and anxiety then, right? I didn't know that. And later on I was like diagnosed, right? I had no clue. And it was like, I was suffering, like school was suffering for me, and that would never been the case in my life. And so I realized, I'm like, I need to get out of here, because I'm going to be one of these like cautionary tales of these kids that like, just like slaved away onto their books and just like never to be found again. Something like that. It was just crazy. But I took time off to live in Cuba, right? And that decision was sort of made for me by my parents, but I'm very happy they did it, because otherwise I probably would have just stayed home and bartended, which is so much fun. But my parents just wanted me to do something else in my life. But when I came back and I met my ex-husband, it just sort of seemed like this is what I needed. And I grounded myself into him. I put my identity and my worth into him. And he is 12 years older than I am. And so I remember thinking, he's 34, he knows everything.
That's such a natural thing though in your early 20s, is you're really trying to find your identity and groundedness. And a lot of times that happens by finding a relationship.
100%. And then I say this about myself, but I'm such a dream encourager that I meet him. He tells me, hey, you know, when I was 27 years old, I almost went to the big show, meaning that he was finally going to do WWE. He's going to be on the show itself. That's what he had always wanted to do. But he finds out, you know, right before like a couple days before he's supposed to go on and finally do it, that his mother gets cancer for the first time. He drops everything he's doing, moves in, helps them out, and never regrets that decision, but always like wondered in the back of his head, like, well, you know, what would have happened? And got a very corporate job. So when I met him, I meet him in my hometown because I had to come back from Cuba because they didn't process my visa, et cetera, et cetera. And I meet him with my dad, right, at the bar that I was bartending in. And he is in a slack and a button down, right? And it was just funny because he's like this blondie blue-eyed country boy from Tennessee, just like so, and 6'4", right? You just like notice him in South Texas. And I remember my dad chatting with him, and you know, I was sitting away from them. I mean, this is all long-winded, but I do love this story. But he's chatting with them, and come to find out that my dad and him start shooting pool, and he says, hey, your girlfriend's really pretty. And my dad's like, that's my youngest.
Oh my God.
That's my youngest. And he's like, oh man, well, sir, do you mind if, right, you introducing me to her?
Oh, dear.
If I win this round of pool, would you introduce me to her? And if you win, I'll buy you a beer. And apparently my dad runs the table. My ex-husband doesn't shoot once. And so he comes over to say hi, and he buys my dad a beer, a Nicaraguan beer. Anyway, the woman that he was with, right, later on, and she's chatting with me. There's two of his clients. It was his client, it was a husband and wife duo. She's chatting with me, and she goes, what was it like growing up on the beach? I always wondered. I grew up in a little town called Rio Hondo. And I go, I know Rio Hondo. My best guy friend, John, is from Rio Hondo. And she goes, wait, what's his name? And I go, oh, his name is Jonathan Medina. She goes, little Johnny Medina?
No.
She's like, I babysat him until he was 8 years old. And so she and I connected, and that's ultimately why I stayed connected with my ex-husband, because I had no intention of staying with him.
Wow.
And so like life really, really pushed me to be connected with him. So I saw that as a sign of like, oh, maybe this is somebody that I should be with. And just great, but I went against my gut. But I let other people decide for me what was best for me. So I think that getting caught up in that story of how we met, and everybody loving him, and he really is just like sweet as pie. And then me knowing, oh, I really want to see him achieve this dream. I want to help him get back to the point where he's happiest. And we bought a pro wrestling company in San Antonio, turned it around. I helped market it with him. It's the first thing that I ever started marketing, because it's on my background. And that's ultimately how I started my trajectory into branding and marketing, because he's like, you're going to market it, kid. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And
Lola, you have to write a book. All the things that you've done. I'm like, wait, and what?
Lola, you've had like 10 lives. But here's the other thing. It's like, So you did get a divorce, but like, that doesn't mean that something has failed or that that relationship really did serve you, like it had purpose in your life. And I would argue like it still was meant to be in some way, to learn something, to grow.
Absolutely. And I think back times where that shows itself to me more than ever now, especially, is the timing of things. The timing of things teaches you to be patient and to accept and to trust that what is meant for you will find you exactly when it's meant to. And that what you go through, right? Because I remember finally being divorced like 26 or something. And, now I look, I'm like 26, I was a baby. I was still a baby. Yeah. But like at the time I was like, no one is going to want me. I'm a bag of damaged goods. Like what ridiculousness is that? Right? But that was my truth then. And now I think, thank goodness that happened, because he encouraged me to act and model. And he goes, he's like, I don't think you really ever really wanted to be a professor. I think you wanted to do that because other people decided that for you. And my sister was going to law school at the time too. So I thought, well, I don't want to not carry my weight here in this family. Right. And he said, stop all that. You really do. Like you light up when you're in front of people and you're doing this. So I did give that a go. I did give marketing a go, loved it, right? Building teams and communities, and that I loved it. I would have never found out that was something that I liked, let alone that I was good at, had it not been for that relationship. And then ultimately, I remember what's wild is when I tell people this story, how we ultimately divorced, it's bananas, because one day it was like Cinco de Mayo, right? It was Cinco de Mayo, and the both of us were like, we should go get tacos today. And I wish I could remember more clearly what was said, but basically he was like, I adore you. And I know that you adore me. But I think that we don't want to be married to each other anymore. And I said, I think you're right. I think that we are confusing how well we work with one another, because we run this business together. And that's not something that most couples can't do. Most couples can't work with one another. And I think because it's so easy and fun for us, that we're thinking, oh, well, we're just so special. We're such a great couple. And I said, you're right. Like, I think that if we keep this going, that we're going to end up ultimately like presenting ourselves, something like that. What was said. So we sat next to each other on my computer, and we're basically Googling like how to divorce.
Oh my God.
Lola.
I'm not
That's
kidding.
So interesting. It's so interesting because you hear a lot about, I've confused lust with love, but it's really interesting. It's you guys had a really flourishing business relationship, which got confused. Okay. Can you tell us how that experience, learning to trust your gut in your early 20s, informed recent sort of relationship decisions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was just got out of a relationship. We were together for about 4 years. We're engaged for about a year, and my wedding was supposed to be last October. And that's actually heartbreaking, because a lot of people always ask me, like, what happened? Or what did he do? And I always think, God, I wish there was one like singular thing, one terrible, awful thing to just justify this very, very terrible, not even terrible, but this choice that causes like people to feel terrible rather. And I remember thinking to myself, he is so wonderful, but why am I feeling this hesitation? I really haven't let myself like dive in too much into processing this. I think that I've only now it's been about 6 months since I ended everything, and that I'm letting myself sort of peek out, because I had to figure out how to live on my own, right? We were living together. I had to get my own apartment.
You're planning a wedding.
Yeah. So like I had to separate, my identity from being his future wife. And now I really am processing of like, you did the right thing. It's taken me months. To get to the point of saying like, yes, you did the right thing. Because, I always make jokes and things get really uncomfortable for myself. But I remember being like, well, I'm not in the business to collect divorces here. So like,
Lola, it's such an incredible lesson and such an incredible example. And it's really good for women to hear that you trusted your gut this time. Do you know what I mean?
I trusted my gut this time. Yeah, because that when I was first getting married, I remember right before I walked down the aisle, and we ended up eloping because 10 days after we got engaged, I got engaged to my ex-husband, he was wrestling and he had this severe injury where he burst every tendon in his left foot, right? And so I went from being like this like little fiance, you know, like, oh, I'm a fiance now and planning my wedding and doing like just being on cloud nine, to now I'm this man's full-time nurse, and this person is wheelchair bound, and I am dragging this 6'4", 300-pound human to the bathroom and showering him and trying to finish my senior year and working full time. It was so much, right? That I just thought, let's just get married before my semester starts, my last semester starts, and have something fun to look forward to. That was my thought, right? Not, I'm about to enter marriage with this person. I didn't even think about all that. And so my sister, it was with me in Las Vegas, and I just said, pick a blue dress, we're going to fly you out, and we're going to do this. And my sister being like, Lola, you're passionate about every single thing. She's like, you're passionate about tying your shoe. I think that she's like, I just thought that you would be a little bit more excited about this. And I said, well, we're already here, right?
Oh.
And totally went through with it. And don't get me wrong, like I say all that and I just think like, oh man, that's terrible. But I just remember chalking it up to everybody gets cold feet, or it is a big decision, and maybe I wish my parents were here, and all whatever it was.
Well, it's really hard to identify your feelings in your early 20s. Like, is this normal nervousness? Is this nervous in a good way? Is this my gut saying no, no, no? Like, it's, and then I feel like once you hit 28 to 35, you start identifying, okay, this is a bad nervous. This is a good excited, but at that age, I remember it being a big blur.
Oh yeah. My sister had a very similar experience with her first marriage. The whole week leading up to the wedding, she was just like, something's not right. Something's not right. And she was about to walk down the aisle, and my dad turned to her and he goes, you got one more shot. You want to make a run for it? And she went, well, we're already here.
Oh, Tina, I didn't know that.
And yes. And she says to me all the time, if you ever have a gut instinct, run. If anyone ever says to you, do you want to run? Run, because you're not in the right spot.
You know what? On that, my aunt is a psychologist, and she says constantly, she's like, I would barely have a practice if everyone worked on hearing their inner voice and trusting their gut. Like if that was something we learned as children and a skill that we developed and a skill, but it's like, we learn it at 34 for the first time. We learn it at 40. We learn it at whatever, and she always says that's what everything comes back to. But it's difficult because no one can tell you, no one can verify for you what your own gut feels like. And as women, we always look outside ourselves for, is this okay? So it's a trickster.
It really is. I think that that's like really resonating with me, because that is what I'm telling people now. And I find myself, because I'm only now getting to the point where I'm much more comfortable talking about it openly, about me ending my engagement. I talk about my ex-husband all the time. I'm like, oh girl, because it was not such a terrible, and it was very different, a very different,
and it was a long time ago. More time has passed. Absolutely. This is more recent. So of course.
Right. And the more and more people are telling me all the time, because I'm very private with a lot of stuff, like, hey, how was your wedding? Or, hey, how did you? I'm like, I go, right. And I kind of like go through that and have to like quasi explain. And what so many people keep telling me, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so brave. Oh my gosh, you did like, and I think I probably need to talk about this more often, because I talk about mental health all the time, because as a high functioning depressive, I think that when people think about like depression, they think of like someone who is just like in bed all day and like hasn't showered for like, 2.5 weeks or something. And I just think like high functionings, we live amongst you.
Yes.
So same thing with my breaking off my engagement is, I don't want the first thing people say is that you're brave. Like I want it to be more common. I should have gone to the point that I did, right? Where if I really look back on times, I'm sure he and I both felt that there were, this isn't working moment prior to even getting engaged. If I had trusted my gut more previously, I wouldn't have gotten to that point. Same thing with other things in my life now, where I have moments of, how did I let it get this bad? Or how did I let it get this far? And I'm like, duh, like you didn't listen to your voice, girl. Like you've been making every excuse for this person's actions or for this situation and distilling it down to something it's not. And then time just keeps going by until finally you either get to a breaking point or somebody else really makes a decision for you.
Yeah, it's something I think we're all going to keep learning. It's such a process. It's not like, oh, we're going to learn to trust our gut, the end, wrap it in a bow. I think it's like we are all going, I know I'm working on it every single day in a million different situations and trying to identify the feelings and all of that. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I think it's
thank you.
Really honest and really helpful. I think a lot of people are going to resonate with it.
I think that, you know, what it comes down to as well, and something I tell my interns and just team members is that if you are rooted more in yourself and you trust yourself more, then you can make really difficult decisions. Because with me waiting longer to make that choice, I remember thinking like, there's no way I can do that. You know, I don't want to hurt anybody. And I don't, you know, and I'm like, who's going to give me an apartment in New York City? And like, how am I going to like pay my rent, you know, and then still have money to do that? Because I was really going from like our lifestyle to
dual income for years in New York City. I mean, it's big change.
Huge.
Big change. And then thinking, well, okay, do I move back home? Do I do this? Do I like, there's like so many, like there was just so many like what ifs. And I think that if like someone, I will champion and I'll be that person like, yes, you can do hard things, right? Like I am that example. You know, I have a girlfriend who she struggles with deciding whether or not, you know, whether or not she's going to stop singing and acting because she's never had a corporate job. So she's like, I don't really like the trajectory of this, but you know, the fear and of the unknown is so high that while her gut is telling her, lean into something new and maybe start your own business or go back to school or do something, that fear of the unknown is so high and so crippling for her that she hasn't made that choice. And I believe, I'm like, yes, you can do it. Trust me. Like I will be the poster child if I need to be. But we need to encourage and have those real conversations as women more and more with one another and encourage each other and just like be the safety net that people feel like they don't have.
We really do, because we all go through hard things. And if you look at your Instagram, you see, oh my gosh, successful model, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. But it doesn't mean everything's perfect. It doesn't mean everything's shitty, but it doesn't mean you haven't gone through hard things, you know, and learn from them. Lola, God, we could talk to you forever. I want to see your book and your podcast too.
Oh my God.
You're so well-spoken. I feel like we've only scraped the iceberg, like the tip of the iceberg with your life experience. We could talk about so much more. Okay. Before we let you go, we want to ask you just some fun rapid fire questions just to get to know you more. Okay. Okay. What is your current nighttime moisturizer?
Oh my gosh. It's Love Indus's potion. It's our love potion. It's a brand new, we carry it at this boutique. It's called Project Gaia. It's incredible. I love the founder. They've got like 5 SKUs. They're brand new as of this last year. And I just like it melts into my skin. I love it so much. She combines Indian ingredients with what she likes to say, New York technology. So East meets West. And their whole thing is she has like silk and copper in it. And it just strengthens my skin. I feel like I've actually seen a really big change. And I'm such a junkie when it comes to anything beauty. And I love like Luxe Beauty and just like wrapping myself and everything.
Okay, say the name one more time.
It's called Love, Indus. INDUS.
Okay, what's the best thing that you're either reading or watching right now?
I just started reading. Well, I started reading and I'm like almost done. Is Oprah's book with Dr. Bruce Weber on trauma. It's called What Happened to You. And she basically discusses how everybody wants to say when we're not acting the right way or responding to things right way, it's instead of people being like, what happened to you, which is more exploratory and the conversation and starts a dialogue, people will be like, what's wrong with you?
Oh my God.
Right. Ooh,
and it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. And
Oh
then
my God.
she talks about how like trauma is such a like a intense, aggressive word where she's like, I think that people think that, oh, well, I wasn't made to sleep outside, all winter. So I didn't go through trauma as a kid. And she's like, it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Oh,
So
totally
incredible.
Oh,
Highly
that's
recommend.
definitely going on my
one.
list.
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
do you have a go-to cocktail?
I love a gin and tonic. I love like a Hendrix and tonic
So
with
does
a
Tina.
bunch of
I
lime.
love Hendrix. My favorite.
Amazing.
Great.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received is always get a mentor. Always get somebody who's so much better at you at something, or that you want to be like them and aspire to be like them. It just, one, it keeps you in line, keeps you accountable. It keeps you from making a lot of mistakes too. And it just sort of centers you back to, okay, well, is this something I want to do? And am I being very honest about who I am?
Is there a woman just right now who you're being very inspired by, that you're following on Instagram, that you're thinking of currently?
I really do recommend everybody to follow my mentor. She's so much great. She's so much like great information, little nuggets, just very good. Like you just see her, you can't like help but smile.
What's her Instagram?
She's the branding professor, and her name is Giselle. And I was mentioning, she is my mentor, but she used to be my publicist when I hosted a television show in Austin. And she really just like leads with her heart, really leads into doing the right thing, leads into building community, loves empowering women, especially women who are embarking on either their first business or second, third, whatever it is. Like she just champions you, and you just feel like you can't not, like you can't fail, like with her on your side. And she's just such a great, just a wealth of information when it comes to branding too. So now as I embark on my me opening my branding company, I feel like she's taught me everything I know.
I know we're running out of time, but can you give us a little nugget on your starting your own business? Can you just give us a quick nugget?
Yeah, so I recently left an incredible job to pursue my own dreams of having my own branding and marketing, a full service branding marketing agency for emerging to mid-sized brands. And it really is going to give people the opportunity to, instead of doing it in-house and kind of stumbling their way through it, I can start a marketing plan for you. I can do marketing strategies, branding strategies, really figuring out like who you are, why you're doing it, and how to get that voice across really beautifully in an elevated way to your specific audience. Or if someone's trying to completely rebrand themselves, I do that too. And or they're just like having a difficulty with like a product launch, I'll put all the pieces together and sort of like play matchmaker on videography, this, that, and whatever, and just really make sure that they have a lot of sell through, and then just have like an ability to scale.
Lola,
oh my
honestly,
God, that's amazing.
I can't wait to watch this grow. Where can we find you on Instagram?
Oh, my Instagram is Live It Up, Lola.
Lola, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. We seriously could chat with you all day long.
Oh my gosh, this energy has been so great. Maybe we just do a part 2.
I
Okay,
know,
great.
Like,
yes.
We need a part 2. Thank you so much for being so open and honest and sharing so much of your life with us. We feel so honored to have been able to spend an hour with you.
Gosh, the feeling is so mutual. I adore the both of you.